This program is made possible by grants from the Bureau of Education for the Handicapped and from International Business Machines Corporation. The Captioned ABC News.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings in London, Max Robinson in Washington. The first part of a special assignment series, The Airline Recession. Will you pay now and fly later? And from our desk in Los Angeles, Frank Reynolds.
Good evening. President Carter and Senator Kennedy will meet tomorrow at the White House. That's the major political story of the day, and we'll have a complete report on politics later in this broadcast. In 3 terrible hours yesterday, Grand Island, Nebraska became a place of devastation as a series of tornadoes smashed through the city. At least 5 persons were killed and many more are missing. Here's a report from Charles Murphy.
The tornado system passed through about 9 o'clock last night. Civil defense sirens and radio bulletins warned of its coming. The Weather Bureau said 7 funnels were seen in the sky. The funnels ripped out 150 blocks of property, homes and businesses. Dazed officials and homeowners have not even begun to calculate the damage, but it's tremendous. The tornado moved from north to south through the city, an unusual direction for them, and when it got to the south part of town here, it caused the heaviest destruction of all. Nearly all of the automobile agencies along South Locust Street were demolished. This motel for travelers was too. Several persons died here. About 100 persons were hospitalized with injuries. The Veterans Administration Hospital was damaged by the storm, many windows broken. 90% of the city is without electric power tonight. The storm also knocked out water, sewage, and gas services. The digging out has only just started. Survivors were trying to salvage a few personal valuables first. Many of the houses here have basements, and that probably saved lives.
And we had the radio on, and it said there's a tornado in the south part of town, and I heard it. They say it sounds like a train, boy, it sure does. And I heard it, and I says, come on. We grabbed the dog, went to the basement, closed the bedroom door, and it was done. We opened the door and looked up.
To the sky.
The sky.
It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Really, everything we got, nothing. Got one payment to go in the house. It's paid for. Terrible.
Grand Island is under curfew tonight and has been closed to visitors. Charles Murphy, ABC News, Grand Island, Nebraska.
Normal earthquake activity at the Mount St. Helens volcano decreased today, but that's not necessarily good news. Geologists there note that a seismic calm preceded the major eruption 2 weeks ago that may have claimed as many as 77 lives. Still ahead, the latest on presidential politics, 1980. From Tehran, the Ayatollah Khomeini calls President Carter worse than a wild animal. He says Mr. Carter's afraid of Iran. And in England, thousands line up to see a race fit for a queen.
Now politics. On the day after the last of the presidential primaries, Democrats are still wondering about the ongoing battle between President Carter and Senator Kennedy, who, as we said, will meet tomorrow. while Republicans are preparing for the fall election. Ronald Reagan will take a brief vacation in Mexico before the convention next month, and sources said today Reagan will make a quick trip to Europe after he is nominated. Here's the latest delegate count. First, the Democrats. Despite Kennedy's victories in 5 out of 8 elections yesterday, President Carter, according to our projection, has 306 more convention votes than he needs to win the nomination. ABC News projects the Kennedy total now 1,218. Reagan ended the primaries with a projected total of 1,526 delegates and a united party. However, that cannot yet be said about the Democrats. We have 3 reports tonight. First, here is White House correspondent Sam Donaldson.
The Carter camp was thrusting olive branches at Senator Kennedy today, like cordwood being shoveled into an old-time railroad locomotive. The president himself tried to telephone the senator twice last night, and when the senator was finally able to return the call at mid-afternoon today, the 2 men arranged to meet here at the White House tomorrow. The president then even discussed the prospective meeting with reporters.
I intend to meet with Senator Kennedy, and I'll congratulate him on having run a good campaign and see what we can do together to work together in the future to meet the Republican challenge successfully.
Would you ask him to join you as the nominee of the party?
I'll wait until I meet with him.
What did he say to you on the phone today?
That he thought it would be important for us to get together at an early time to discuss the political situation.
Does it sound like he's being conciliatory?
I wouldn't say that, no.
Campaign Chairman Robert Strauss said the president in victory intends to be magnanimous toward Kennedy and his point of view.
We hope to use it to see the platform committee. The platform drafting committee has ample representation for all points of view, including any number of representatives of Senator Kennedy.
Party Chairman John White said he's certain Kennedy will do the right thing and support the president, hinting ever so gently that he'd better for his own self-interest.
The unifiers go on and have great influence in the party. Hubert Humphrey. Those who lend themselves to divisive movements in the party often fall by the wayside. Gene McCarthy. I don't see the senator being anything but a unifier in this process.
In his meeting here with Kennedy tomorrow, the president will not in so many words ask him to withdraw now, but instead will praise him, stress the need for unity, and promise to accommodate him to a great extent on the party platform. Mr. Carter taking as his theme, "Blessed are the unifiers, for they shall receive the future thanks of the party, not its enmity." Sam Donaldson, ABC News, the White House.
This is Catherine Mackin. For a good part of the day, Kennedy, his wife Joan, and his 3 sisters met at his McLean, Virginia home with 8 of his top political advisors to talk strategy and plan for a statement he promised last night in which he said he will outline the future course of his campaign. Whatever Kennedy ultimately decides, reportedly he believes he cannot just turn around and throw his support to Jimmy Carter. It is felt that if he did so, he would immediately lose his credibility with the labor leaders, political activists, fundraisers, and voters who have supported him this year. Just what his strategy will be is to be decided over the next several days as Kennedy rests, considers his options, and talks to his supporters. He reportedly believes that there is no need to make all these decisions instantly. Appropriate time can be taken. He does plan to address the platform committee of the Democratic Party next week, especially to highlight his differing views with President Carter on the economy and how inflation and recession should be dealt with. So for now, there are a range of possibilities. A fight with Carter on the platform, a rules fight to open the convention so delegates can be free of commitments to Kennedy and Carter and vote their consciences. The problem with both of these courses of action is that Carter partisans at the convention will greatly outnumber the Kennedyites. So Kennedy would stand to lose any such fights and could tear apart the party in the process and potentially damage his own political future. All possibilities Kennedy, no doubt, is weighing. Catherine Mackin, ABC News, Washington.
This is Sander Van Oker. While Kennedy and Carter are trying to figure out how to position themselves for the next 2 months, Democratic Party leaders are concerned about a knockdown, drag-out convention battle like the one the party had in Chicago in 1968 that handed Richard Nixon the election. Democrats historically have been more divisive at conventions than Republicans. In 1976, Ronald Reagan was closer in terms of delegates to taking the nomination from President Ford than Kennedy is in taking it from President Carter. But Ford prevailed, as Carter likely will. What seems to be aiding the president now, in addition to the supremacy of his numbers, is that for the most part the party doesn't want to fight. Party leaders have told ABC News there's near unanimous agreement among them that Kennedy does not have a realistic shot at the nomination. They say there is no groundswell for changing the rules of the convention. And overriding all these considerations, they say, is the sure knowledge that Reagan and Anderson will be tough opponents for Carter, unless the party is unified at the convention and after. Buttressing those concerns is a poll in today's Los Angeles Times that indicates that most California Democrats who voted for Kennedy yesterday did so as a protest against President Carter. And the survey also indicated that if the general election had been held yesterday, Reagan would have swamped Carter in California. But the question Democratic leaders now face is, what does Kennedy really want, short of the nomination, that Carter can give him? Kennedy now sounds as if there's nothing else. And if that's the case, then the Democrats will have a fight at Madison Square Garden, and it will hurt them in the fall. Sander Van Oker, ABC News, Los Angeles.
Thank you, Sander. In other political notes, Democratic voters in California's 43rd Congressional District nominated one Tom Metzger, who happens to be a Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, to run for Congress. Democratic officials made clear that Grand Dragon Metzger will get no help from the party this fall against the Republican incumbent, Claire Bergner. In another California district, Democrats defeated veteran Congressman Charles Wilson, who was reprimanded by the House 2 years ago and will probably be censured next week for financial misconduct. And Californians yesterday rejected proposals to cut their state income taxes in half, remove most rent controls, and impose an excess profits tax on energy companies.
Overseas, it is the beginning of the 8th month. American hostages in Tehran have now been imprisoned for 214 days. In Iran today, the Ayatollah Khomeini demanded that President Carter be put on trial. That was only part of what he said. Much of his message was delivered to a conference which is still dwelling on what it calls U.S. intervention in Iran. With today's details from here in London, here's ABC's Bob Dyke.
Khomeini accused Mr. Carter of contravening human rights by ordering last April's military rescue mission. Khomeini said the mission failed because God willed it to fail. Khomeini told the delegates that future attacks on Iran will have no effect and that his countrymen would rather revert to the old standard of living and use the donkey for transportation than be slaves of President Carter and his like, who Khomeini reportedly described as worse than wild animals. Khomeini's strong words were spoken in a frail voice in a mosque near the home where the Ayatollah is recovering from a heart attack. Elsewhere in Tehran, one of Khomeini's most powerful parliamentary backers, the Ayatollah Beheshti, held a news conference where he is reported to have said that the international conference might help the hostages. But a conflicting report quotes Beheshti saying the conference will make no difference. The American delegation, led by former Attorney General Ramsey Clark, met with Iran's President Bani Sadr, who suggested the formation of a commission to investigate the conduct of the United States government in Iran. Clark said he supported the proposal. Bob Dyke, ABC News.
Elsewhere overseas, in Rome today, 2 Arabic-speaking gunmen attacked the Iraqi embassy. There was a shootout. One embassy worker was killed, another slightly wounded. One gunman was seriously wounded and captured. The other fled on foot. Iraqi officials and students demonstrating outside the embassy blamed Iranians for the attack. No particular reason has yet emerged as to why their attack was mounted. Max?
The Statue of Liberty was closed to visitors today while police probed the wreckage caused by an explosion in a museum at the base of the statue last night. Authorities said 2 sticks of dynamite placed in the museum caused about $15,000 damage there, but no damage to the statue itself. No word yet on who planted the dynamite. In less than 24 hours, confessed murderer Jack Potts is scheduled to die in the electric chair at Georgia's maximum security prison in Reedsville. And Governor Busby says he will not intervene. There will be a complete report on Jack Potts and the death penalty tonight on the ABC News broadcast Nightline.
Here in California today, the United Auto Workers re-elected Douglas Fraser as president of the union for a second 3-year term. The Auto Workers Union is going through a critical time right now with more than 300,000 members out of work. And today, from the automobile industry, more bad news. Sales of American-made cars in May were down 37% from the same time last year. The worst sales figures for the month of May in 22 years. Max?
Frank, one of the reasons automobile sales are down is the high cost of fuel. It would be even more expensive if President Carter had his way, but today the House voted 376 to 30 to kill the president's 10 cents a gallon gasoline fee. Here's more on that story from Britt Huell.
The Speaker had tried in vain to delay action on repealing the 10-cent fee, and when it came up today, the only thing that prevented instant passage was that so many members wanted to howl against the fee.
This proposal, which President Carter has made, is nothing but a gold-plated turkey. It's indefensible as energy policy, it's indefensible as economic policy, and the Congress would be shirking its responsibility to let it go into effect.
Most passionate, though, was a speech defending the fee as a conservation measure by Vanek of Ohio, who is retiring this year.
If we don't do it by rationing, if we don't do it by tax, if we don't do it by price, pray tell, how do we do it?
Republicans were backing repeal, hoping to embarrass the president.
The president has threatened to veto this resolution if we send it to the White House. I think the president has been spending too much time in the Rose Garden wearing rose-colored glasses. No way will this House vote to sustain that veto.
But as soon as the House had acted, the president had this to say.
Soon a bill will get to my desk, I believe, that will reverse this decision to impose a conservation fee. If and when that happens, I intend to veto the bill immediately and send it back to the Congress.
The president's only chance of winning seems to lie in the Senate, since the overwhelming vote against him in the House today suggests he can't sustain his veto there. Britt Hume, ABC News, on Capitol Hill.
Automobile drivers aren't the only ones worried about the increasing cost of fuel. The high fuel prices are also having a serious effect on the airline industry. In the first quarter of this year, only 2 of the major airlines avoided losing money. We have more from Jules Bergman in the Special Assignment Report. Airline recession, pay now, fly later.
This was the future of aviation, the new age of jets. Yet in many ways, the Concorde and the 747 typify the dilemma of the airlines. They're both airliners that burn too much fuel and don't carry enough passengers. The Concorde lacking the seats and the 747 seldom filling them. Fuel costs and empty seats have the industry in trouble. Little did the Wright brothers know what they were starting. In the short space of 70 years, aviation has gone from 30 to 2,000 miles an hour. It is an industry that moved forward from the DC-3, the first successful airliner, to the wide-body jets. And it was all based on productivity. The more passengers you carry in less time, the more money you make. In 50 years, the airlines have become a $27 billion a year industry. As they grew, the competition became more frantic. They sold speed and a fun way to get there.
Just one thing we ask you, please. No dancing in the aisles.
The airlines banked on a giant tourist boom, but it was not to be. The industry misread where it was going, not up as sharply as expected. This year's first quarter earnings were down drastically. Pan Am had the largest single loss, nearly $75 million. United, the largest carrier, lost nearly $47 million. Total loss for U.S. airlines, $307 million, more than in any single year. The airlines see an obvious reason for their current plight.
Fuel has cost us another $4 billion this year over last year for a total of $10 billion. Every day it costs us $11 million more than it did last year for about the same amount of fuel.
Jet fuel costs have soared from 11 cents a gallon before the Arab oil embargo to about $1 a gallon today. And in 5 years, that's expected to double. And those costs have adversely affected the ability of today's jetliners to make money. 727s that needed to fly only 49% full to break even must now sell 20 to 30 more seats on each flight. For 747s, it's even worse. For this jumbo jet to turn a profit, nearly 70% of its 400 seats must be filled. So ticket prices now reflect the higher costs. But that is not the whole story. Ticket prices also conceal what critics call inept management. They claim management misread the market, bought the wrong planes at the wrong time. Management that overcompetes on the same routes. When the Carter administration completed deregulation of the airlines, that basically allowed carriers to fly anywhere they wanted to, most of the big companies jumped right in.
Most of the airlines responded like a small child in a candy store. They asked for and got far more routes in the first place than they undertook to operate, and far more than they should have tried to operate.
On many days, this 747 flies to California only 30% full, and the airline loses thousands. Yet the New York to Los Angeles run is often mentioned as one of the routes adversely affected. 3 carriers, United, TWA, and American, used to fly it. And while the companies were said to make a modest profit, deregulation changed the picture.
Eastern's Transcon, a whole new way to cross the USA.
Eastern, primarily a north-south carrier, jumped in and became the 7th airline to fly the run. The result? The passenger pie was cut into smaller pieces. Eastern, at best, may temporarily succeed in a new prestige market. But many analysts believe that Eastern's aggressiveness will be written off in red ink. The problem for the flying public is that when airlines lose money, 2 things usually happen. They decrease service and they increase prices. We'll take a look at the future effects of both tomorrow. Jules Bergman, ABC News, New York.
Howe, the grand old man of hockey, hung up his skates today for the last time, ending a 32-year Major League career during which he set 11 NHL scoring records. Since his first game in 1946, Howe played in more than 2,000 games, won the NHL scoring title 6 times, and was named the league's most valuable player 5 times. He finished up his career playing alongside 2 of his sons for the Hartford Whalers. Howe is 52 years old. The Thoroughbred Board of the Maryland Racing Commission has upheld the decision of the stewards at the Pimlico Racecourse and declared Codex the winner of the Preakness Stakes. In disallowing the claim that Codex filed the filly Genuine Risk, the members of the board said they had seen no new information nor convincing evidence to cause them to change their minds. Peter?
Well, finally, Max, from here in Britain, and despite the spelling, it is Derby Day. It's a carnival, really, on the Epsom Downs just outside London. It's a day for top hats, most of them rented, and tail coats. It's a major outing for the Queen and the Queen Mother, this country's 2 most famous horse lovers. Oh yes, the Derby is a horse race, and it was the 201st running of this famous classic. 24 horses pounded their way across 1.5 miles of rich English grass. They did so for a rich purse. Britons had bet almost $70 million, and when Henbit, ridden by Willie Carson, crossed the finish line, his American owner was richer by almost $400,000. This correspondent's favorite was a 30-to-1 long shot, and as it turned out, even that was a compliment. Frank?
Thank you, Peter. Well, a lot of us here are still holding tickets on Genuine Risk. That's our report for now on World News Tonight. For ABC News, good night.
ABC, this has been World News Tonight.
The Captioned Center thanks the American Broadcasting Company for making the ABC News available. This program was made possible by grants from the Bureau of Education for the Handicapped, U.S. Office of Education, and from International Business Machines Corporation.